3.8, we're talking employee engagement now, or rather the lack of it, because people who work in the marketing and advertising industries are disillusioned. So says new research from the Core Group, and the founder and managing director Steve Halligan is here to tell us more. Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
What's going wrong in marketing and advertising?
Well, I think it's a general trend across many industries, not just advertising and marketing, but what's happening is people are finding that their levels of engagement are not at the levels that we would expect to see across other industries.
The headline from your report is that across all industries, the level is 84%, and we'll have a discussion about what that figure actually tells us, but it's 84%. But for the marketing and advertising creative industries, it's 75%. So there's clearly, it's not just an industry-wide thing, there's something in those industries.
There is, but I think first of all you need to take a step back and look at how you measure engagement in the first place. And there's a big debate as to what engagement actually is. And many people get it confused with satisfaction. So the first thing organizations need to understand is that employee satisfaction isn't really worth measuring for two reasons. Firstly, it's impossible to satisfy all of your employees. If you take a simple situation, there are 5 of us in this room. If we were all applying for a promotion, chances are one of us would be satisfied because we would get it, and the other 4 would not. Doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad organization, that's just the way organizations run. But more importantly, there is no statistical correlation in any research done anywhere in the world between how satisfied an employee is and how hard they're likely to work. I can be pretty satisfied, have a nice pay packet, nice job title, come in, do the minimum work possible and go home. So making sure that people understand what they're measuring is the first important aspect.
Fine. So satisfaction, that's the old school tools and they don't really work. How are you measuring engagement, and how can you convince me that engagement does increase productivity, which is what the CFO, the HR manager care about?
Absolutely. Well, firstly, even the latest thinking on engagement says the way we've currently been measuring it is not effective. People tend to think of engagement in bipolar terms. Either an employee is engaged or disengaged. Actually, that's not possible. The latest research coming out of places like the CIPD in the UK is that if you turn up for work, you must be engaged to some degree. You can disengage from a family member, a friend. How can you disengage from your boss? If you're my boss and you've asked me to do something and I ignore you, the consequences are going to be pretty severe. So the latest thinking is it's what type of engagement people have. And there are 2 basic types. At the lowest level, everyone is engaged at a transactional level. At the more significant level, people are engaged at an emotional level. So when you're looking to measure engagement, you've got to make sure you understand the difference between the two. If someone tells you you have disengaged employees, I would suggest you don't believe them.
I can't accept that just turning up for work means you're engaged. I mean, considering that free labour is a 2-way contract and the average contracted worker will work as hard as he or she needs to fulfill their side of the bargain. Any less and I'm reneging on my side of the deal and I risk getting fired. But do I actually need to engage with my employer to do that?
Well, you'll be engaged at a transactional level. You'll come to work, you'll put the effort in, and you're constantly using what's called social exchange theory. You're trying to establish, am I getting enough back for the effort that I'm putting in? And that's where things like salary compensation becomes important. If you want to drive, and what you get from that, by the way, is not performance, you get compliance. People tend to do the minimum necessary not to get into trouble. So that is the basic type of engagement which many people actually experience. The more significant one that drives productivity is the one where I'm committed to the vision and the values of the organization. I believe in the products and services that we offer. I can see that someone cares about my future and is trying to develop me as an individual. So if you want people to be more productive and work harder, yes, they must be satisfied to a transactional level to a degree, but they must be satisfied at an emotional level much more to get that extra effort you're looking for.
And to see how this works, you refer to something called, is it the 10-6-2 rule?
Yeah, it's a principle that was developed actually by a company called the Leadership Development Council. They did a massive survey globally, and they've come up with some correlations between the amount of engagement people have, the level of effort they're likely to put in, and the results that they produce. So a 10% increase in engagement results in a 6% increase in effort, which results in a 2% increase in productivity.
Which isn't huge, is it? I mean, 2% doesn't sound very impressive.
No, but if you've got 5,000 employees and they're all putting in 2%, getting extra 2% results, then it is very impressive.
Then it's meaningful. Okay, let's get back to the media and marketing industries, because that's what your latest research covers. You surveyed over 500 of them across the region, some of them working in agencies, the kind of Mad Men type thing that we know and love, but a lot of them working in their clients, in fast-moving consumer goods companies, which are traditionally the big spenders on advertising. What did you, or first of all, what did you ask them, and secondly, what did you learn?
We've distilled the aspect of both emotional and transactional engagement down to 12 key questions, and they're based around 6 key issues, which actually spell out the word values. So the first set of questions relate to the vision and values of the organization. Not just do they know them, but do they motivate and inspire them? Achievement is the second aspect. Do they understand what they're meant to be doing every day, and do they feel good about the contribution they've made? Learning and growth comes next. Having someone who understands you at a managerial level and tries to look at how complex your world is comes next. Encouragement, do we have pay and reward structures that encourage me to work hard? And safety and security. So the questions were based around those 6 issues. Now, you mentioned that the score is 9 points lower than the regional average. It's not actually a percentage, it's an index. So if you get scores between 90 and 100, it means you have highly engaged people at both a transactional and an emotional level. We don't see that very often because it's tough to do that across the whole organization. Much more common is to see scores within the 80 to 90 range, and that's where the regional average sits at 84. What we found in the media and advertising industry was that we're down at 75. So we're actually 9 points on the index lower. More importantly, we're lower on both emotional and transactional. And in an industry where you're looking for people to be creative and inspired, then we really need to have that level of emotional engagement much higher.
You've developed a series of 12 questions that accurately reflect the levels of engagement, you say, felt by an employee. What are the most important?
It depends on any given time, because obviously markets change. At the moment, safety and security seems to be much higher, having much higher importance than it used to.
As in job security?
Job security, and not physical safety, although obviously that's also important. So that because of the blip that we had in 2008, 2009, and because of the economic conditions that we're generally experiencing in the region, safety and security seems to be much higher than it has been in the past.
Surely the need to have a job then would be a point of engagement.
At a transactional level. So what happens is people come in, they do what they have to do, and they go home. Not because they're inspired to do great things, but because they're worried about losing their job.
I would have thought anybody who wanted to keep their job would actually do slightly more than they needed to do to try and keep their job.
You would think so, but what was interesting in our findings is actually the more senior you became, the less emotional engagement we actually saw. So people at a lower level in an organisation were more emotionally engaged than the leadership teams.
We haven't got much time, so that is obviously quite important. What else? What other questions were there?
The whole bunch of questions. Pay and compensation is obviously important to people at a transactional level. That was significantly lower than the rest of the industries we track.
You mean we don't worry about salaries so much as we did, or
no, people are less satisfied with their salaries.
less satisfied with them?
I think there have been many pay freezes. Most of us who live in the region know that the cost of living is steadily increasing, and in real terms people feel that their salaries are actually going backwards because of that.
Sharia writes in, what about engagement from bankers? None of us are happy. I'm not sure you speak for the entire industry, Sharia. Do you have any research on the banking industry, or do you have to come back another day for that?
We don't have anything specific on the industry. We have customers that we've dealt with who are in the banking industry, but I can't share that data because that's proprietary work we've done for these.
So we'll have
customers.
to go with Sharia's analysis then instead. Thanks for texting in, Sharia. I appreciate that. And thanks for joining us this morning to share the findings of your research, Steve Halligan of the Core Group. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.